So, one of my favorite 2D games is Spelunky. First off, just because the procedural generation in it is what totally got me into generating content for games. I would play Spelunky for such a long time, and I would get so many deaths in it, but because of just the way that it was put together, I absolutely just loved that game. And I mean, it completely inspired me to do so much work with procedural generation just because I completely am fascinated by the way it works. And I mean, that's the biggest one. And then besides that, recently we have Super Meat Boy, which came out, and I am a big fan of that one, mainly for the controls are beautiful, spot on, and so I can play that one for a while too. Only problem is I think I've gotten to a point in the game right now where it's just very difficult for me to move on anymore because I'm very bad at it. For me, going back again to Spelunky with Derek Yu, that also, and Borderlands too. The guys Gearbox that did that, they have completely, like I said, enthralled me with their procedural generation, and that completely is what got me ready to do this game. I totally wanted to do it off of them. This is something I really like, but I obviously couldn't put in my game, but the freedom aspect I tried to incorporate into the way each individual level was run. I think the biggest essential ingredient for making a game is replayability. Absolutely. Making a game that's rather an experience instead of a game is, I mean, it's hard to explain, but it's something I really strongly believe in. You want to have that new feeling of discovering a new game. You want that to just last as long as possible. And in order to do that, you have to make a game where you can just squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of your engine as you can. And this is something that I really like about open world games, because you can go back and do things the way you wanted them to. And it's another thing I really like about games with randomly or procedurally generated levels, because it's opening more content out of the engine, and that is just an absolutely great way to keep the replayability up, and that's what's most important to me. I think that what's unique about my game, Koya Rift, is the way its gameplay is completely designed to be circular. You want to, I want to have the player go into the game and play a round of it, and then I want them to play it again, and then I want them to play it again, and I want these different playthroughs to build on top of each other to make the game more enjoyable the next time. I don't want the game to be something you just play through and then you're done. You're like, yes, I beat that game. That's not important to me. What's important to me is that you've experienced it at the highest difficulty level that's possible for you. So the game is completely designed around being able to play it over and over again. No memorization possible, procedurally generated levels, automatically adjusting difficulty, and keeping you on edge. And I want it to be that game that you can always go back to when you need a shooting experience, so that you're always ready to go at it again because your work is never really finished. I am completely self-taught for both graphics and Photoshop, and also the programming side of things. I learned programming back when I was maybe 12 or 13. I started learning programming, and I think I've got it pretty down now that I can at least get done what I want to. And I learned from internet tutorials for Photoshop. Maybe last year or something, I took a programming class in high school, and it was just awful that I absolutely got nothing out of it. So I think it's definitely important to be self-taught, because if you teach something to yourself, you absolutely can understand it way better than when someone else teaches it to you. And I think being able to understand everything is how you can build a project and call it your own. I am a one-man team, and I'm probably never ever going to do that again. It was an awfully painful experience because there are just so many things that you have to be able to do and be well-rounded at them to get the job done. But it's crazy. So what I've done basically until this point is I typed up a little list about what tasks I need to get done and by what months and stuff, and I'll type all this stuff up, and, you know, I've tried to keep very organized about things, and I hang it over my desk, and I'm crossing things off as I go, and, you know, feeling really good about myself in the process, and, you know, little sticky notes everywhere. It's absolutely fun to do it, though, because I feel like I'm, you know, getting little achievements in this game of life, finishing this game. But I have one guy that does the music for me. So I guess technically I'm not a one-man team, but considering everything else that had to get done, it was just awful. Okay, so I thought about what am I good at, and then I thought about that a little bit. And back when I started this game, I wasn't that great at art, maybe like vectors and Photoshop, maybe. And so I thought, what am I bad at? And I'm really bad at pixel art. So I knew that wasn't going to be an option. So I decided to do high-resolution digital art, one-time scale up, just doing everything in Photoshop, you know, like I would a digital painting, and putting it together with the code, and, you know, rendering it into the game. And it sort of took on this own style because it was just me painting everything, and it was me animating it and me coding it, and I really like how it turned out. Very glowy, ridiculous amounts of sort of texture detail on the various monsters and stuff, and it feels very organically nice when I got to see it all coming together. So I really liked how the art came together, and it didn't take me too long to do. So all in all, it was very balanced. The biggest challenge was making it run fast, actually. I coded this in GML because I needed to do it quickly. Came up with the idea, and it was like 8 months before the IGF was upon me. So I knew that I had to make this game quickly, and I was going to do C++ with OpenGL rendering. And I realized that there's no way I was going to do that, so I coded it in GML instead, which had built-in rendering. And GML is a very flexible and powerful language, despite, you know, what the stereotype is about it. And the problem is, though, is that it's very slow, at least in this version, before it gets updated. So I spent much of my time optimizing and figuring out ways to make it quicker and make it quicker and make it quicker so that it could run at a decently smooth, you know, 60 frame rate. Because I couldn't multi-thread and I couldn't use too much hardware acceleration, you know, with what limits I had. So that was the toughest part for me. A really difficult spot for me, which wasn't even near on the technical side, was coming up with the name. Coming up with the name Koya Rift took me forever. The game was maybe 4 months into development. I had no name for it. It was nicknamed, all the source code files were nicknamed Spirit Shooter 1 or Spirit Shooter, something like that. So I took a text file, and I was essentially putting every single idea that came into my head into this text file. And then after I had maybe 50 some possible names, we started narrowing them down gradually, and it eventually came down to Koya Rift. And the reason I liked it, because Koya is the planet that the game takes place on, and then the Rift is like this dark crystal thing where, you know, the enemies are coming from that you have to seek down. And this is nice because if I ever do make a sequel, I can call it the name of the next planet that it's infected. Like Pomona was another one, so it could have been Pomona Rift, but Koya Rift got the final vote. I'm not going to tell anything about the design of the game yet because it's not final and I'm not supposed to announce it. But it uses completely fundamentally different concepts that are very abstract and strange and have never been seen before. So if it can be pulled off well, it should go really great. But it is not Blair Kingdoms.